Uh, who are you, and what is your spouse's name and your children's name?
Well, I am Mrs. Douglas Patton House. My husband was named for Generals Patton and MacArthur. His brother was killed. They were his in Battle of the Bulge, and they were his commanding officers. 5 months before my husband was born. And I am Dinah. That's found in Genesis 30:21, and her name shall be called Dinah. I've been called Diana and a few other Donna, and I prefer Dinah. My dad named me Dinah Lee, and I'm now House. It's Howard. And my dad was from Southern Illinois, and he was on maneuvers when he met my mother, and thought she was very beautiful. So anyway, I'm sure glad they had that union, and I enjoy life. It's God's best gift. And I enjoy the people that I grew up with. Liberty is a small community, and all of the people in the town, there were some prejudiced people, which my young years and I always seem to pick up that, because I didn't grow up with that, because my granddad had friends of all of the African American community and my uncles, and they were my neighbors. They were dear and kind, and I'll show you an article that appeared in a magazine someone else wrote about me. And in that article, I talked about my neighbors, May and Sid, and some other people. And someone approached me after that article came out. There were several thousand, like 29,000 copies went out to everyone that was a telephone subscriber in the area. It was in the Dial Tone magazine. And they said, well, why didn't you write about some of the people in my own race? And I said, well, they were my neighbors, and they're who I thought about. And it was things like the beautiful flowers in May's yard, and the person interpreted what I said correctly. And that's what she wrote, and I'm so glad she did. I sent Betty Eunice a copy of that.
Okay.
But I'll get your address, Ernest, and I'll send you all a copy of that too. Because that's a few years ago, and it expresses better. Like I'm in my 30s, I think, or so then, or early 40s. But I still feel that way.
Okay. Now,
And but I
Fannie
knew.
George.
Well, she worked here for Miss Dick. She worked for family in Smithville, the Congers. I learned later on that she worked for the Congers. They had the funeral home up there, and they were well-to-do people. And then she started working for Mr. Grover and Miss Dixie after they married. They didn't have any children together, as I told you. That was by a prior marriage. And anyway, she had her own room here, and she stayed in the house. And I came, and she really could cook, and she always was like, I had a little meal when I came to play, and I came to play pretty often during the summer months when they were up here, the grandchildren. I played with children here in town too, but Betty Eunice and Betty was older, and she did things, not a lot older, but she did things that, she was more about business sometimes, and then she went to school in Lebanon. You may not have a copy, but I'm going to give you a copy of what I did for Black History Month this year. And it tells it all about how I felt about the families in Liberty. And she came up the aisle with the lane. It was my granddaddy's property between which the city is claimed now, and our house was maliciously burned somehow, that I grew up in. And it was a beautiful old house that he had built over the foundation of one of the early Liberty houses. And grandmother said, well, the kitchen of the gossip place was the living room of our house. And when it burned, Ernest, Pat, and I were here. We were leaving the next day to go live in West Virginia for his work. And I watched those logs. It sure enough, I was born in a log cabin. I told him.
You're born in a log cabin. Okay.
But anyway, Fannie was a wonderful person, very well-mannered, very polite, and an integral part of the people here. And everyone loved her.
Did she? What did she look like? Describe her.
Well, she was very pleasant.
As far as physically?
Physically, she was
tall?
a she was a slight person, not probably as slight as my little grandmother, who was very slight, but she had to have her shoes custom made, and she wasn't a midget. She was perfectly formed. But as I said, people from Scotland and Ireland and England are all small. We've been there.
Mm-hmm.
The men, women, most of them are very small. My granddad would be an exception, and he must have come in with the Vikings to steal the women.
Oh.
No, my cousin Chet, he taught avionics to the Free Chinese before Mount came in, and this guy was educated. And he said, well, that's what happened, Dinah. He said the Vikings would sail in, steal the women, and leave. And that's how some of the people got to be a little bigger. Makes sense, too.
Yeah.
They did a lot of raiding back then. But off the subject.
Okay, where did Fannie come from?
She lived in downtown. But she did live up around Silver Point at one time, because there's a Church of Christ up there, and we pass by it very often going to Cookville up the old Silver Point Road, and it's a brick church, and Fannie said, that's where I belong to church. She told me that.
Okay.
And it's like a landmark now. No one attends church there, but that was Fannie's church.
That was her church. That's where she came from.
Yes, it's right, probably that area. And it was just as you reach the top of Silver Point before you cross the old road that comes back to Smithville around the dams, on the, I think it's Sligo Dam. I get mixed up on the one that goes as far and the one that goes to Cookville. But it's before you get to the Appalachian Center for Crafts. That road is the one I'm talking about. So then you cross and go down onto the interstate there. At Silver Point, there's a little restaurant there and a railroad track. But the old road, you turn like you're going down the hill before the interstate highway was built. It was the way you had to get from Smithville, because I did it once before that with my grandfather, my Aunt Lorraine. She was taking him on a ride to see the new dam. And we came down that hill by where we go to church now. And right there on your right is a pretty little brick church of Christ. And that was Fannie's church.
Oh, okay.
And she told me that.
All right.
So I said, Pat, every time we go by, that's Fannie's church.
Oh.
But she was, as I told you yesterday, she said, I was trying to help her because I must have gone to downtown and picked her up because she didn't walk to Liberty. I'm pretty sure I did. And she wanted to see Miss Myrtle. And so I brought her over, and I brought her here and everything when we moved back here. And we owned it twice. We sold it the first time, and then we came back and we moved our trailer down to Miss Myrtle's, and I said, I just couldn't stand to be here and not live here because the children enjoyed it, and so we bought it back. And Pat, he would go live on the farm tomorrow if we would. And I would. I mean, it's kind of like Edgar Guest's poem, Home. Mr. Grover said once, he said, it's like being in heaven when I'm in this house. It's not that way to me. But you close the shutters, and whatever they're doing out there you're in your safe haven. And I'm brave, I'm not needful of that. But these little animals and things in the yard, it's pretty pleasant. And I'll eventually please my husband and go down to the farm and live.
Did she ever talk about any of her family members, her children, her mother, her father?
No, I wish she had. Did Fannie have children?
I don't know.
I didn't know Fannie was George was not her maiden name, right?
She was a Thomas.
Fannie Thomas. Well, she must have married a George.
Yeah, she married Stephen George.
Okay, right.
You have any recollection of Stephen George or any of the George family?
No.
Or any people?
I know some Caucasian Georges, and I know some Caucasian, which my husband might be related to, Sellars. his dad was trying to tell me the genealogy. Now, the one thing my Yankee Doodles had going for them is they wrote it down
Right.
from 1700s to that. But my grandmother and grandfather talked about it, and I recorded it and wrote it down.
Oh, okay.
Before, I haven't forgotten anything, but in case I ever do, it's there.
Uh-huh.
But, and it's all documented in cemeteries and different things. Have you been to Salem Cemetery?
Yes.
Yeah, that's where I've got pictures on my camera. I took my daughter Martha up there not too long ago, and we walked through, and I showed her the Miss Eunice's grave. I was looking actually for Robert Lee's grave, see if he's buried there, and Tony said he was, but I couldn't find it. And I walked all the way over. See, that section they designated for the people was right up next to the church. And I loved it because they didn't take care of it back then. But it had what I've got outside my house, if it'll ever take hold. Nothing grows through it. Vinca vine, and it's real pretty. I'll show you when you go back. But that was covered with Vinca vine. I mean, the things were there. And to me, it was like that poem, Eulogy in a Country Churchyard. It was so beautiful.
Right.
But I looked and looked, and I didn't know where else to look. It wasn't near Miss Eunice. And I would think he would have had. I'm going to ask Tony if she's ever visited. And
I'll speak with her.
yeah.
Correction. Fannie was a George. That was her maiden name.
Okay.
Well,
That's what they called her.
Her father was Stephen George.
Okay.
Okay, so by her having the George name, I guess that she never did marry, probably.
I kind of never knew it if she did, but I'll tell you what I can do, and I hope he's still living. I have Evans and Claire's number, the two children.
Right.
Ed might know.
Ed might know. Okay.
And I would hope he would know. But strange thing, Ed's dad and my Uncle Johnny were friends, and the night before Ed's dad died, and excuse me, Miss Organ dreamed Uncle Johnny walked down that lane. God has so many ways of signs and warnings for us. I don't know how that works, but I do believe someday we'll all know, it'll all connect to something.
What was some of her hobbies? What did she like to do? What did she do? What did she like?
I don't know any hobbies. Well, after she did the whatever chores they had going on here, and Miss Dixie had on an apron, and they sort of worked together. And I know Fannie washed the windows. Bless her heart. I've done enough of that too. And I think about her being small and all that, but they watch TV together.
Watch TV. What type of shows did they watch?
I have no idea what they probably watched things that you could learn something from, or the news, or they didn't watch soap operas, I'm pretty sure. They weren't the soap opera type, okay?
Oh.
And they probably watched some common things that were fun, but Miss Dixie read, I've got a lot of her books. She had books like the Good, the Perfect Sunday School Teacher, How to Be a Good Sunday School Teacher, and to further that. And Fannie was like that.
She was like that?
Well, when she said to me, and I said I wanted to help her because I thought, I don't want you to fall. She was good getting around. She wasn't going to fall. But I felt like I was in charge of her, and I didn't want anything to happen on my beat. And she said, that's when she said, the Lord is my shepherd. She said it real happy to me, you know.
She was very religious type lady.
She was not religious. No, she was just a calm, carried herself proudly person.
Right.
That's the best way I can describe her. She was an attractive, nice, pleasant demeanor.
Okay, you and her relationship, was it a good relationship?
Oh, yes.
A good relationship?
Well, I loved her.
Okay, what were some of the things that y'all did together?
Well, I just went to see her after she wasn't here. I saw her here when I was growing up, and I played here very, very often. Right. And as I told you, she said, you and your husband both come from good stock. She liked us.
She did.
She met him. And after they broke up the house here, I went to see her in her trailer. William bought a trailer for her to live in.
William?
Yeah, the only child of the people here.
Mm-hmm.
He bought her that and put it on a lot over there. I guess he bought the lot too. I don't know, unless it was something Fannie already had.
It was a downtown?
Yeah,
Downtown.
yeah. I could show you where it was, but I'm not sure of the streets. When I get, you leave your address with me, and
Okay,
I can do some of that and tell
Okay.
you.
Sure.
But I don't know of anyone who didn't like her. And again, Ed may have things to tell you that
Mm-hmm.
I can.
And
Yeah, it. She was always clean, and a good cook, and very polite and well mannered.
what were some of the things she liked to cook? What was her best dish? Did you?
It was just good Southern cooking. She could
Good
make
Southern cooking.
anything. What we all sort of grow up eating.
Where did she say she learned it from? Her mother, or
She didn't tell me.
she didn't tell you?
No, I didn't. I was just little growing up, and I didn't ask those kind of questions.
Oh,
I just said yum yum,
Uh-huh.
and they always had a nut bowl.
Uh-huh.
Now I like nuts. I'm one of the. I think I may have told you all, or I might not have. I'm probably one of the few women who's ever asked her husband for an apple for Christmas.
Mhm.
But my granddaddy and I used it to break up hickory nuts with a hammer, and so boy, I went after those hazelnuts. They always had good nuts in their bowl, and almonds and everything. And Claire, we'd be playing, and I'd be over there in the nut bowl eating the nuts. And Fannie would replenish it for me.
Could she drive a car? Did she?
No, she didn't.
She
She didn't
didn't
drive.
drive.
She didn't drive.
So she basically walked a lot.
I guess she walked some places, but Mr. Grover picked her up
Right.
and brought her and took her back.
Mr. Grover.
Yeah, that was Miss Dexy's second husband, the
Right.
insurance person.
Yeah.
And they were very fortunate to have, but then later, I don't know why, I just never picked up on, I mean, there was never nothing out of the way that would make me, and I probably would have picked up because it wasn't at my house either. And my uncle already briefed me on people not to ever go around.
Right.
And I didn't, and I remember those things too. You know when you're little, who's nice and who's not.
Mm-hmm.
But there was never anything about her that didn't seem just normal and happy and good to me.
Okay.
Very pleasant and warm. And then when William and Maxie moved to a nursing home, and Fannie, I don't know when she died. We moved away, Ernest, with my husband's work.
Mm-hmm.
And I stopped to visit people then, but I didn't get to see as much. I don't really know exactly when Fannie died because we were somewhere else.
Somewhere else. Okay, you were.
But I did visit her in her trailer while she was there when we came back.
Mm-hmm.
But we left again and went to West Virginia when we owned this house. So that, makes a difference.
Yeah. Okay.
But I was going to show you, I did this book for